I feel like Replit's agent had two modes, as I figured out. There was a PM mode and a code editor mode. I have a strong feeling that the PM mode was actually O1 because it was very good at the reasoning and the coding wasn't that good. It launched last week and we know that they've given this to their partners. So like startups that OpenAI has either put some money in. This announcement today was basically of a new method of thinking. So it's not necessarily a new model. We don't exactly know if they're using GPT-4o under the hood or not. But what we know is they've trained this model to respond to questions differently. And they've trained it to think before it answers, basically, as a step within the model. People have done this before with fine tuning and other higher level things.
Like GPT-4, GPT-4o. You would just ask it a question and it's increasingly getting faster and faster. It'll immediately start like responding with its main answer. And you're saying that there's like a period of time that it's like thinking before it gives you an answer. So it takes longer
Exactly.
for it to respond?
Yeah, it will for sure take longer. And that's just like a limitation of this type of response. And we saw a huge wave like a few days ago of some people who said they'd done this with Llama 70B and it was like as good as 4 or 5B. Turns out they hadn't.
So I want to try a quick prompt here. And so let's say I want to clone Notion and I want to turn it into an app and web app on all platforms and types. Please tell me how I can do it. Okay. So we're using, and the new model is called Chat-GPT O1 Preview. And let's run it. This is my first time doing it on the computer, at least. So it literally says thinking. And so it is significantly longer. Oh, it shows you it's thinking. Oh, it literally says, I'm digging into legal side, specificality, copyrights, trademark laws. I'm considering front-end and back-end tools. I'm piecing together the app's interface with tools like Figma. What does that even mean, though? Is it just like a placeholder text? I'm very curious on what that actually means.
Yeah, I don't know what it's doing under the hood. I don't think anyone does, but it seems like there is some back and forth. Maybe there are two models, maybe there are not more. Who knows what's going on? Maybe it's the same model, just like repeating itself and trying to dig through a problem. I don't know exactly how it works, and OpenAI won't publish that. But from what we do know, it reasons about things before it gives a response. So you saw the reasoning.
Okay. And so my question to you is, what types of apps do you think are going to become better as a result of this new way of thinking?
Yeah, some people were just like, it does better at things that require like logically reasoning through data. So one example that one of my friends gave me was basically that she was using it to go through a bunch of emails and dig out specific pieces of information. Like in this example, it was like emails about logistics, and she wanted specific information about what's going on with different like pieces of things that her company had ordered, equipment, that kind of stuff. And so it was able to like reason about those things better rather than just like autocomplete, which is like how the older models used to work. And I think the interesting part of this is like right now, it probably won't be that much better at most tasks. If we go to Sam Altman's tweet, he said it's actually not that good when it comes to like basic tasks. Maybe it was someone else's, but they basically said it wasn't as good when it comes to writing copy or expanding on text. If you told it to write an email, it probably wouldn't do that much better. Even like writing basic code. But right now, it's only thinking for 10 or 20 seconds. I think the key thing that they have unlocked here is they can make it think for many minutes, hours, and days. And that hasn't even come out yet. And that's when it's going to be really crazy.
Was there a chart? Someone posted a chart where it basically showed the performance got better the longer it thought for. And so like right now, as you're saying, it's only thinking for 20 seconds. What if you let it think overnight or something like that? That's like where my brain goes.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's just like definitely a breakthrough for certain fields where there's a lot of frontier level stuff happening. And that's why the examples that Sam Altman shared in his tweet were like really difficult problems. Like he shared like competition math, competition code, and PhD level questions, which require you to keep reasoning, checking your work, and going around with that. And the meme that's been going around is a strawberry test, where people ask it, how many R's are there in strawberry? And the older models couldn't do it, and now the newer models can. So that's because it goes through and checks its own work to figure out like
It's
I think
not
that's
just like chaining GPT-4 prompts together, like where it's like I feel like you could write a really good prompt if you were like making an app that did this, where you just have it respond with the sentence, then you have it trigger another response. Is it just like doing that, or is there some other technology under the hood? That's what I'm curious about. I feel like it's almost like doing it in just two prompts. That's what it feels like to me. And I've done this many times with GPT 4.0, and it just, all of the AI models, for whatever reason, get stuck on this. But from my perspective, it literally looks like it's just, and I know it's not. I know that it's, this part right here is just like another GPT prompt, but with the quote formatting. And so I'm struggling to figure out what makes it different. And I guess maybe no one knows except for the OpenAI team.
yeah, maybe they don't even know,
Yeah.
honestly. Like a lot of this AI stuff is black box. And you could like people have done chaining, right? Chaining is a very common way of building AI applications. A lot of the bigger AI application companies like Harvey for legal, they do a lot of chaining. But and like LangChain is one of the biggest AI libraries which developers use. And the main feature is you can chain multiple AI LLMs together to reason about a longer task. But what used to happen is it used to get stuck in a loop where it didn't know how to exit that loop. And clearly there's some sort of breakthrough here. I don't know if they know we or what they don't know or what they do know. We don't know anything other than what they've showed us today, which is it does some sort of reasoning. It's a lot more like agentic than the previous models, where it can do things itself and get itself out of these holes that it used to dig itself to with like just simple like GPT chaining, where you're trying to get to a
That
particular
sounds
outcome.
great for me because yesterday, as I had a 1,000-line code file and I had to get out of it. And I'm wondering maybe it'll get better at refactoring. And by refactoring, I didn't know what it meant yesterday, but I've been using AI to code, and I ended up with a file that was too long, and I needed to separate the file into a bunch of smaller files. And it seems like something it would be a lot better at because it can like reason like, okay, what are the steps I need to do, and then go through them one at a time, which seems like really useful for coding now that I think about it. And I'm curious. So I actually have a coding project open right now. It's an app that you've seen before, and I've used it for one
Mm-hmm.
prompt. So I have set up O1 preview. And for anyone who wants to set up OpenAI, there are some steps. I'm going to link to an Anja's video down below if you want to set that up. I'm curious, have you used it to code yet beyond just making that video?
No, I haven't gotten a chance to use it to code, but I saw some benchmarks that people published that it wasn't that much better at like application development, just because I, I think like certain parts of application development require a lot of thinking, and that's usually the start, figuring out the first prompt. But as you get into it, you probably just want to build out features faster, and maybe the time to reward ratio doesn't make sense later on. Like I saw this chart, we can pull it up later, but it was like it's only better than GPT 4.0 at coding like
Mm.
60% of the time, and 40% of the time it's worse. It's for 5 or 10 times longer response time. I don't know if that's worth it for me, but I think I'll definitely use it to like plan before I get into the execution of things, and also for the first prompt, because the first prompt sets up a lot of the foundations, which I think is necessary for building a good project.
This is Composer, and I actually use Composer to build this app right here on the side right here. Oh yeah, I just added this feature that lets me search through the notes. So I can type in like banana, and then it like in real time finds the app. And I actually tried using the new AI model and it didn't update the file. It like laid out all the steps that I needed to take to do it, but it didn't actually make the changes in Cursor. I think it's also going to take some time for the people at Cursor to set up their app so that it uses this, because the output is just in a different format. So I would assume that they have to like optimize Cursor for that type of output. Let's create a new chat and let's just say, tell me about this code base. If you wanted to take this to production, what are the steps you would need to take? Your goal is to profit as much as possible. All right, let's try this. Is it even responding?
It's thinking.
It's still thinking. I guess it has to go through so many files. Okay. All right. We'll let it. Oh, there we go. So I guess you have a pretty good idea of where I am in this app. Yeah, I guess I wonder if it actually went through or if it's giving us just like a boilerplate answer.
It's talking about
Yeah, and it
so
has
it
advanced
definitely
search
knows what the
capabilities. And I was thinking about adding tags to the notes, even automatically. That would be really fun to do it automatically and group them by tag. And AI auto tagging. I literally said that.
yeah.
And a web clipper extension. I've been saying that. I literally was thinking like you should be able to
Yeah.
save. Imagine if we had a team account and we before this podcast, we could just save things to this note. That'd be really cool. Wait, this is actually awesome. Enhanced content generation. Use more sophisticated AI models for better quality content. So it looked and saw that I'm using Llama 3.170B. So it's use a better model. Personalized recommendation. Leverage machine learning to suggest ideas or content types. Natural language queries. Allow users to interact with their data using conversational language. I think that is a higher quality answer than Claude gives currently. Let's go over this tweet. Let's break this down here.
Yeah, so this is just, they probably ran an A/B test blindly for people who are using Chat-GPT. There are probably 100 million people using Chat-GPT. Probably 1 million or 2 million people got there, so the data is good. But yeah, they just probably, you can thumbs up and thumbs down something with Chat-GPT. So they probably, without telling people, were like, hey, using O1 preview in the back end, and they saw if people started thumbing it up more or thumbing it down more. And basically they found out for questions related to personal writing or editing text, it was actually lower. Whereas for questions related to computer programming, data analysis, and mathematical calculation, in that order was higher. But which model was better? The win rate wasn't that much greater. And I don't know if you've seen that feature in ChatGPT, but sometimes they give you like 2 responses. So that's probably more likely on how they'd presented this to the user. And so the user chose which one they thought was better. And it seems like for computer programming, O1 preview and O1 mini won about 60% of the times over GPT-4.
And so what's the difference between O1 preview and O1 mini?
Yeah, just the size of the model. So one of the models is bigger and the other one is smaller. That's pretty much it. And what that means is that like the main difference here in the model training is not by like the data or the amount of compute they used, but in the inference step. So I just sent you another link that kind of expresses what this means.
So the O1 mini is in theory much faster.
Yeah, it should be faster. It probably has lesser.
Oh, this is interesting. This is actually real. I saw this before I was boarding the plane. So yeah, break this down. This is really interesting.
Yeah. So I probably wouldn't be able to break this down into something that's easily understood.
Let's see how good Chat-GPT is. This new O1 preview. Please break this down at a 9th grade reading level and make it incredibly easy to digest. And you know what? Let's go 10th grade. I'm feeling smart today. And so we will, where'd it go?
I don't think O1 is multimodal yet, so I don't know if you can upload images, but
don't worry.
you can
just,
yeah.
We'll figure that. We'll chain it. We'll go like this. We'll go to Perplexity.
Yeah.
We'll paste this in here.
Yeah.
Describe this image in perfect detail. And so we'll get Perplexity to do that. And while that's going, we'll prepare Chat-GPT. We'll say, I'm about to give you, I just saw an image that I'm about to describe, and that is what I want you to teach and make easy. And we're just gonna, we'll copy this right here. And yeah, we'll just paste this whole thing in and we'll see what they say. So we're referencing this image right here. And so this is actually a good test. How is it at teaching something very simply, which I think is very important. It's like actually one of my biggest passions in the AI space. So imagine you have two cars that both need to be built, then driven. The way they spend time in building and driving is different. Let's use this idea to understand two types of large language models, LLMs, the most common ones, and a special strawberry model. Large language models are like smart robots that can read and write text almost like a human. They learn from tons of books, articles, and websites to understand language patterns and generate sentences. The three stages of LLMs. So there's pre-training, which is this is the first big step where the model learns general language rules from a massive amount of text data. Right? That's just how ChatGPT, Claude have worked since the beginning of kind of this whole movement in late 2022. It's like building the car's engine and body. The post-training, fine-tuning, here the model gets extra training on specific tasks. I think of this as like thumbs up, thumbs down, right? It started off with this model that was trained, and correct me if I'm wrong here. It started off with this model that was like trained on a ton of data. And in that data, there was a lot of things that they don't want. Like they probably talked about how to set buildings on fire with certain materials. They started talking about a lot of illegal things, a lot of things that weren't appropriate for the workplace, a lot of things that were just incorrect. And so they basically had to get a bunch of humans. And that's the controversy that they got, like just people in other countries to work for below minimum wage. And they just basically said bad, good, bad, good, bad, good, where you basically train or you reinforce that behavior out of them. And then there's inference, which this is probably the most abstract term here, but let's see how it does. So inference, after that thumbs up and thumbs down process, right? There's inference. And so this is when the model is actually used to generate text or answer questions. It's like driving the car on the road. Okay, I wish we had more on inference. I'm just going to say, can you just talk about inference?
Pre-training is like basically you are taking all the information from the internet and you're like basically telling this model, can you predict the next word based on all this information? And you're adding these steps where it gets better. No one really knows how those steps work, but it's somewhat like our brain, like a neural network that makes a bunch of connections. Roses are and then red, right? So that connection is like made, and they're like billions of these. And that's what people say when they talk about parameters, billions of parameters. Now, post-training is like making some of these networks stronger. Like when you're thinking and when you're remembering stuff, if there was like an emotional event that happened, you know how those like you might have learned this in high school, that those neurons become more activated and stronger. That's the post-training. Is okay, make sure that you know this stuff really well and answer in this way, and don't like you said, it's like the human feedback. That's where they do the human feedback loop. And the inference part, I think the best way to describe it is like it doesn't change the actual brain structure or the actual structure of the model. You're not updating the parameters. You're simply just telling it how to respond. So that's where it learns how to reason. It learns how to think in a step-by-step manner.
So it's spending more time on that step, I'm just curious on what
that's the main conclusion.
Like these bars are, I just realized that they're percentages. So as a percentage, the pre-training is less important. I'm just curious on what it means. So is this time? Is this total resources? Or is this just an abstraction? Is it spend?
It's probably an abstraction of all of those things. So it's just spending a lot more time in the inference stage where it's not updating the parameters of the model, but like making sure that the model responds in a certain way where it like thinks about everything before responding. It's basically teaching it this extra step, but after it's been fully formed and it doesn't update like the knowledge it has or the data it has. It just updates the way it responds.
And so I'm curious, when people talk about agents, I'm wondering, I've heard a lot of people say that the future of agents is having this one really smart model where they basically delegate to smaller models who are better at certain things, but they're faster and it's cheaper. And so I'm wondering, you have this model like Strawberry at the top of your agent workforce where you say, I want to build a website or I want to build a company that does this. And they can reason, as I showed in Cursor, it can reason on the plan and then delegate to something smaller. There's some things that maybe like Llama, like really fast models might actually just be able to get the job done, and then they can almost check their work. Is that a correct kind of way to think about where this whole space of agents is going, or am I completely off here?
Yeah, I think that's the correct way to think about it. And this is just a guess. I don't know anything about this. I feel like Replit's agent had two modes, as I figured out. There was a PM mode and a code editor mode. I have a strong feeling that the PM mode was actually O1 because it was very good at the reasoning and the coding wasn't that good. And it feels like that wasn't that long ago. It launched last week and we know that they've given this to their partners. So like startups that OpenAI has either put some money in or has a direct relationship with.
Here it is.
If you scroll down for the next one, that's
Oh
where
yeah, here's the tweet.
and it says that it says the team composition is myself, the project manager and strategic planner, and then the editor, a sophisticated engineer that can improve software features. And I feel like in my testing, the project manager was a lot better in Replit Agent than the editor, which didn't do as good of a job in comparison. But that's just based on my testing. It's just a wild guess.
I'm curious, what project do you think like I should build with O1 that I could use their API in an app? What are some ideas you have of a tool that would be uniquely good for O1? And I'm going to see if I can build it tonight.
Probably something related to planning, I think, because it'd be able to plan better. I think you should honestly build something that helps you plan projects and figure out what the best steps are to take to build those projects. It seems like this is going to be a lot better at the planning step. Or that's one thing. I think the other way that you could go down is based on OpenAI's news announcement. It's a lot better at math and reasoning. So you could do something there, like maybe an IQ test game, you versus an AI agent. Another one could be sort of app that helps students with math problems, but that doesn't seem as exciting. You could also build, those are some examples. Another one could be, what if you built like Cursor, or what if you built Cursor is to VS Code. You can build something that is to Google Sheets, maybe. So like a simple Excel model that is like just a grid, a web app that's a grid that's AI powered. So it does your modeling as you're typing it out. And since it's good in math, it'll be able to get those grids filled out accurately, which existing models probably couldn't do that well. Maybe I don't know if you use Excel for your business and mapping out revenue, cost, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That would be very useful and practical for people. So yeah, there's some ideas I'm shooting out.
Thank you for laying out all those. As you were saying those, I had 50 ideas flash to my head. And yeah, I'm really passionate about coming up with ideas for coding and even like with an existing code base. So like somehow figuring out all like what we did in Cursor, but maybe or a path of prompts. So like it literally could come up with all the prompts you might need to get to the end. And that would actually sounds fun. Call it pathofprompt.com, where you
awesome.
map it out. You give what a good Cursor prompt looks like, and then you just have it come up with every single Cursor prompt. And then we just have to figure out a way to automate it.
Yeah, that could be awesome. I feel you're already working in Compose script. Maybe some like a visual Compose script could also be good for this because it would be able to build out a UI much easier. But that being said, I don't think the API supports like calling functions or image stuff yet. So that
Well,
might be a
we
little
could do a
tricky.
chain. We could like somehow find a way to like call in other ones. If it says a certain
Yeah.
code, then it triggers another one or something like that. Anything's
Yeah.
possible. And so I know you have
Yeah.
to go, and I'm just going to start building right after this. But yeah, thanks for doing this.
See you, Riley. Bye.